I never believed in fate until the night a dying man's eyes locked onto my wrist and shattered everything I thought I knew about myself. The emergency room at Boston General was chaos incarnate that Friday evening. Gunshot wounds weren't uncommon in our part of the city, but the energy surrounding this particular case felt different. The paramedics wheeled him in with unusual urgency, their voices low and tense as they transferred the patient to our trauma bay. I caught fragments of whispered conversations as I scrubbed in. Brazilian connection. Don't ask questions. Just save him and forget his face. I was 3 years into my nursing career, competent enough to handle high-pressure situations, but still young enough to feel the adrenaline spike when Dr. Morrison barked orders. The man on the gurney was maybe in his mid-30s, powerfully built despite the blood loss, with dark hair and a face that would have been striking if it wasn't contorted in pain. 2 bullets had torn through his torso, one dangerously close to his heart. Emily, pressure on that wound now. Dr. Morrison's command snapped me into action. I moved without thinking, my hands finding the injury, pressing down hard as hot blood soaked through the gauze. The patient was semi-conscious, his breathing ragged, but even in his weakened state, there was something magnetic about him, an intensity that made the air around him feel charged. I focused on my work, on keeping him alive, because that's what I did. I saved people. I didn't ask who they were or what they'd done. The surgery lasted 4 hours. By the time we wheeled him to the ICU, my scrubs were stained crimson, and my arms ached from maintaining pressure during the most critical moments. I was exhausted, ready to strip off my gloves and forget about the mysterious man with the bullet wounds. That's when it happened. As I leaned over to check his IV line, my sleeve rode up my left arm, exposing the scar I'd spent my entire life hiding. It was an ugly thing, a jagged, irregular mark that ran from my wrist halfway up my forearm, raised and pale against my skin. I'd had it since before I could remember, since before the Harrisons adopted me when I was barely a year old. They'd told me it was probably from an accident in my infancy, something that happened before they found me in the state foster system with no records, no history, no explanation. I usually kept it covered with long sleeves or carefully positioned bracelets, self-conscious about the questions it invited. But in the chaos of emergency surgery, I'd forgotten to be careful. The patient's eyes were supposed to be closed. He was supposed to be sedated, floating in the space between consciousness and oblivion. But when I looked down, his dark eyes were wide open, staring at my exposed forearm with an expression that made my blood run cold. Onde você conseguiu isso? His voice was barely a whisper, rough with pain and something else. Something that sounded like grief and fury mixed together. I didn't speak Portuguese, but the intensity in his gaze needed no translation. Before I could react, his hand shot out with surprising strength for someone who'd just survived major surgery. His fingers wrapped around my wrist, not painfully but with desperate certainty, his thumb pressing directly against the scar tissue. "Where did you get this?" He repeated in accented English, his voice stronger now, cutting through the beeping of monitors and the soft hum of medical equipment. "Tell me where you got this mark." "Sir, you need to stay calm." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Answer me!" The command wasn't loud, but it carried such weight that I froze. His eyes searched mine with an almost manic intensity, and I saw something in them that terrified me. Recognition. Dr. Morrison rushed over, administering a sedative that finally loosened the man's grip on my wrist. As his eyes fluttered closed, he murmured something in Portuguese that sounded like a woman's name, his fingers falling away from my arm as consciousness left him. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding. Around me, the other nurses exchanged worried glances. One of the security guards who'd been posted outside the room stepped closer, his hand resting on his radio. "You okay, Emily?" Dr. Morrison asked, concerned but clearly wanting to move past the incident. I nodded, unable to find words. My wrist still tingled where the stranger had grabbed me, and something about the desperation in his eyes had awakened a strange, unsettling feeling in my chest, like a locked door inside me had just been rattled for the first time. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. I kept my distance from the ICU, letting other nurses handle the mysterious patient's care. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at my scar, as if it held answers to questions I didn't even know to ask. It wasn't until I was changing in the locker room, pulling on my street clothes, that one of the older nurses, Maria, cornered me. She was a Brazilian immigrant who'd worked at the hospital for 15 years, and her expression was grave. "Emily, honey, you need to be careful," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure we were alone. "That man in Trauma Bay 3? I heard the paramedics talking. They think he's Rafael Moretti." The name meant nothing to me, and my confusion must have shown on my face. "He runs the Brazilian operations on the East Coast," Maria continued, her voice dropping even lower. "Drugs, weapons, protection rackets, you name it. People say he's untouchable, that he's got half the police force in his pocket, but they also say he's been different since his wife died, more brutal, more unpredictable. Whatever you do, stay away from him." I wanted to laugh it off, to tell her she was being dramatic, but the memory of those dark eyes studying my scar, the way his hand had seized my wrist with such certainty, made the laughter die in my throat. I drove home to my small apartment in Somerville, my mind racing. I'd lived a quiet life, deliberately simple. After growing up in the foster system before being adopted at 13 by the Harrisons, kind people who'd given me stability and love, I'd worked hard to build something normal. Nursing school, a decent job, a small circle of friends. I didn't date much, didn't take risks, didn't attract attention. The scar on my arm was the only mystery in my otherwise transparent life, and I'd learned to accept it as just another quirk, an unanswered question that didn't really matter. But the way Rafael Moretti had looked at it suggested it mattered very much. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment, analyzing the shock and recognition in his eyes. Around 3 a.m, I found myself standing in front of my bathroom mirror, studying the scar under the harsh fluorescent light. I'd done this countless times as a teenager, trying to remember how I'd gotten it, searching my earliest memories for some clue. There was nothing. My life began at 13 months old, according to my adoption papers. Before that, just a void. I traced the irregular edges of the scar tissue, following the pattern I'd memorized years ago. It wasn't a clean cut. It was jagged, as if made by something sharp but wielded in violence or chaos. The doctors who'd examined it when I was younger said it was old, probably sustained in my first year of life, and that whoever had stitched it up had done a poor job, leaving it to heal rough and raised. My phone buzzed on the counter, making me jump. A text from an unknown number lit up the screen. "We need to talk about your arm. Tomorrow. I'll find you. Irem." My hand started shaking. Irem. Rafael Moretti. But how did he have my number? How did he even know my name? I didn't respond. I turned off my phone, climbed back into bed, and pulled the covers over my head, like a child hiding from monsters. But sleep wouldn't come, because the monster wasn't under my bed. He was lying in a hospital bed downtown, and somehow, impossibly, he knew something about me that I didn't know about myself. I called in sick the next day, something I'd never done in 3 years at Boston General. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but the thought of returning to that hospital, of potentially crossing paths with Rafael Moretti again, filled me with a dread I couldn't rationalize. My apartment felt smaller than usual. As I paced from room to room, my phone turned off, and sitting on the kitchen counter like a small bomb waiting to explode. The text from last night had been clear. He would find me. The question wasn't if, but when. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. So what if some criminal thought he recognized my scar? It was probably just the medication, the trauma of being shot. By now, he'd likely forgotten all about it, moved on to whatever business kept men like him operating in the shadows of the city. But deep down, I knew better. The look in his eyes hadn't been confused or drug-addled. It had been certain. Haunted. As if my scar had torn open an old wound of his own. Around noon, I finally worked up the courage to turn my phone back on. 3 more messages from the unknown number, each more insistent than the last. You can't hide from this. I have questions. You deserve answers. I'm not the enemy, Emily. But someone is, and they don't want us talking. The last message made my skin crawl. I deleted all of them, blocked the number, and told myself that was the end of it. I should have known better. At 6:30 that evening, I ventured out to grab groceries, convincing myself that staying locked in my apartment was ridiculous. The Stop and Shop 3 blocks from my place was brightly lit and crowded with the after-work rush, safe, public, normal. I was comparing prices on pasta when I felt it. The weight of someone's gaze, heavy and focused. I'd experienced this sensation before in my life, the primal awareness that comes from being watched, but never with this intensity. I turned slowly, scanning the aisles. My eyes locked onto a man standing near the produce section, not looking at vegetables but directly at me. He was tall, muscular, wearing an expensive black jacket that seemed out of place in a grocery store. When our eyes met, he didn't look away. Instead, he pulled out his phone, spoke a few words into it, and nodded in my direction. My groceries forgotten, I abandoned my cart and headed for the exit, my heart hammering. As I pushed through the automatic doors into the parking lot, I told myself I was being paranoid, letting fear run wild. Then, I saw the car. It was a black Mercedes, parked directly under a streetlight, engine running. The back door opened as I approached my own vehicle, and a man stepped out. Not Rafael Moretti, but someone who carried the same air of controlled danger. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with silver threading through his dark hair. "Miss Harrison?" he said, his accent thick and melodic. "Mr. Moretti requests the pleasure of your company. Just a conversation, nothing more." "I'm not getting in that car," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. My keys were in my hand, positioned between my fingers the way the self-defense instructor had taught in that seminar I'd taken freshman year of nursing school. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "He said you would say that. He also said to tell you that if you don't come willingly, he'll be forced to come to your apartment. He knows where you live, Emily. 3rd floor, apartment 3C, the one with the blue door and the spider plant in the window that's dying because you forget to water it." The specific details made my blood run cold. He'd been watching me. Or having me watched. The violation of it, the casual invasion of my privacy, sparked anger that temporarily overrode my fear. "Tell your boss that if he wants to talk, he can call me like a normal person." "Oh, wait." I blocked his number because normal people don't threaten women in grocery store parking lots. I climbed into my car, locked the doors, and started the engine with shaking hands. The man didn't try to stop me, just watched with that same unsettling calm as I pulled out of the parking space. In my rearview mirror, I saw him get back into the Mercedes. They followed me home. Not subtly, not trying to hide, just maintaining a steady distance of 2 car lengths, a silent reminder that I couldn't escape whatever this was. I parked in my building's underground garage and ran for the elevator, repeatedly pressing the button as if that would make it arrive faster. The Mercedes pulled into a visitor's spot just as the doors closed, and I caught a glimpse of 2 men exiting the vehicle. Inside my apartment, I triple-locked the door and called the only person I could think of, my adoptive mother, Carol Harrison. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Her warm, familiar voice almost made me cry. "Mom, I need to ask you something about my adoption, about before you and Dad found me." The words tumbled out in a rush. "You said I was in state custody, that there were no records about my biological parents. But was there anything else? Anything unusual about how I came to you?" There was a long pause on the other end. Too long. "Mom?" "Emily, why are you asking about this now, after all these years? Please, just tell me. Was there anything strange about my case?" Another pause, then a sigh. "There was one thing. We never told you because we didn't want to scare you. And honestly, we never understood it ourselves. When the social worker brought you to us, you had that scar on your arm. We assumed from an accident. But there was also a note in your file, just a single line that the caseworker wouldn't explain. It said, 'Child recovered from unsafe situation. Origin investigation inconclusive. Recommend permanent placement and sealed records.'" Sealed records? What does that mean? "It means someone with authority decided your past needed to be buried. We tried to fight it, tried to get more information, but we hit walls everywhere we turned. Eventually, we focused on giving you a good life instead of chasing ghosts. You were happy, Emily. We thought that was enough." I thanked her, promised I was fine, and hung up before she could press me with questions I couldn't answer. My mind was racing, trying to piece together fragments that didn't want to fit. A knock at my door made me jump. I approached slowly, peered through the peephole, and felt my stomach drop. Raphael Moretti stood in my hallway, wearing an expensive charcoal suit despite the late hour, looking nothing like a man who'd been shot 2 days ago. He was alone, hands visible and empty, his expression unreadable. "Emily, I know you're frightened," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the door. "I know this makes no sense to you, but I swear on everything I have that I mean you no harm. I just need 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain why your scar matters, and then you can decide if you want to hear more." "Go away or I'm calling the police," I said, hating how my voice wavered. "The police can't help you. Not with this." He leaned against my doorframe, and I could see fatigue in the set of his shoulders. 10 years ago, my wife was murdered, shot in our home while I was away on business. They killed her and took our 6-month-old daughter. I never found my daughter. I never found her body. I never found anything except my wife's blood and a baby's blanket. My hand froze on my phone. "My wife had a scar," he continued, his voice rough with emotion. "From a kitchen accident when she was young, irregular, jagged, running from her wrist up her forearm. The police used it to identify her body. They told me it was distinctive, unique. And then yesterday, I woke up from surgery and saw the same scar on your arm. Identical. Impossible." "Lots of people have scars," I whispered, but my conviction was crumbling. Not like this. Not in this exact pattern. I memorized every centimeter of her skin, Emily. I kissed that scar 1,000 times. I know it like I know my own face. And when I saw it on you, I thought... His voice broke. "I thought maybe my daughter survived. Maybe someone lied to me. Maybe you're her." The words hung in the air between us, absurd and impossible, and somehow terrifyingly plausible. "I'm 23 years old," I said. "If your daughter survived, she'd be 10. "Yes, which means you can't be her. But that scar, Emily, it connects you to my wife somehow, to the night she died. And I need to understand how." Against every instinct screaming at me to stay safe behind my locked door, I found my hand reaching for the deadbolt. Because he was right about one thing. I deserved answers. I'd spent my whole life accepting the blank space where my origins should be. But now someone was offering to fill it in, even if the truth might be darker than the mystery. I opened the door. Rafael Moretti stood in my doorway like a storm barely contained, all sharp edges and coiled tension, despite the expensive suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Up close, without the barrier of Trauma Bay chaos, I could see the man beneath the reputation Maria had warned me about, handsome in a brutal way, with dark eyes that held too much pain and a jawline that looked carved from stone. "May I come in?" he asked, and the formality of the question seemed absurd, given that he'd sent men to follow me, that he knew where I lived, that he could probably kick down my door if he wanted to. I stepped aside, and he entered my small apartment with the careful awareness of someone trained to assess threats. His gaze swept over my living room, the second-hand couch, the nursing textbooks stacked on the coffee table, the framed photo of me and the Harrisons at my graduation. Everything about my space screamed ordinary, safe, unremarkable. Everything except the woman standing in it, apparently. "Would you like some water? Coffee?" The words came out automatically, nurse mode kicking in even though my hands were shaking. "No, thank you." He remained standing, maintaining distance as if he knew that sitting would make me more uncomfortable. "I know this is overwhelming. I know you have no reason to trust me. But I need you to understand. I've spent 10 years looking for answers about that night. 10 years investigating, paying informants, following every lead that went nowhere. And then you appear, with her scar, and suddenly nothing makes sense again." "Tell me about her," I said, surprising myself. "Your wife. What was her name?" Something in his expression softened, just for a moment. "Isabella. She was Brazilian from São Paulo, but we met in Miami. She was studying art history, completely different from my world. She shouldn't have loved me, shouldn't have married into this life, but she did. She was gentle and kind, and everything I wasn't." He pulled out his phone, navigating to a photo that he turned to show me. The woman on the screen was beautiful, dark hair, warm eyes, holding a baby with dark curls. But it was her smile that caught me, something genuine and bright that seemed to light up the whole image. "That's the last photo I have of them together, 3 days before." He stopped, jaw tightening. 3 days before someone broke into our home and destroyed my entire world. I studied the photo, searching for any resemblance to my own features. The woman had darker coloring than me, different bone structure. But there was something about the eyes, maybe, or the shape of the mouth that made me uncertain. "You said they took your daughter. How do you know she died if they never found her body?" "Because the alternative was too painful to believe. Because after 6 months of searching, of paying ransoms to false leads, of finding nothing, I had to accept that whoever killed Isabella took my daughter to hurt me further, and that a 6-month-old baby couldn't have survived that long on her own." The police agreed. They declared her deceased in absentia after a year. "But now you think differently?" He looked at my arm, at the scar still visible below my rolled-up sleeve. "Now I don't know what to think. The odds of you having an identical scar are astronomical. But the timing doesn't work. You're too old, and you've been in the system since you were an infant according to my research. Unless what? Unless the records are wrong. Unless someone created a false identity for you, aged you up, buried your real history so deep that even I couldn't find it." He started pacing, energy crackling off him. "I've been in this business long enough to know that anything can be bought. Documents, identities, silence. If someone wanted to hide a child, make her disappear into the system with a new birth date and a manufactured past, it could be done. The suggestion was insane. I knew when I was born, May 15th, 2002. I had a birth certificate, medical records, adoption papers. My entire life was documented, wasn't it? "This is crazy," I said, but doubt crept into my voice. Even if my records were somehow falsified, I'd remember. I'd know if I wasn't really 23. "Would you? What's your earliest memory?" I opened my mouth to answer, and found myself hesitating. My childhood with the Harrisons was clear. Family dinners, school plays, learning to ride a bike in our suburban driveway. But before that, before age 4 or 5, adoptive children often have gaps in their early memories, especially if there was trauma, I said defensively. "It doesn't mean anything. Or it means everything." Raphael stopped pacing and turned to face me fully. "Emily, I'm not asking you to believe me right now. I'm asking you to let me investigate. Let me look into your adoption records, your early medical files, anything that might explain the connection between you and my wife. Because even if you're not my daughter, and logically you probably aren't, you're connected to what happened that night. Your scar is proof of that." "How? How does a scar prove anything except that I had an injury as a baby?" "Because Isabella's scar was distinctive, documented. The police photographed it during their investigation. And I've never seen another one like it in 10 years of searching. Until yesterday, on your arm. That's not coincidence. That's a breadcrumb, and I've learned to follow those no matter where they lead." A knock at my door made us both freeze. Raphael's hand moved to his jacket, where I assumed he kept a weapon, his entire body shifting into a defensive stance. "Were you expecting someone?" he asked quietly. I shook my head and moved to the peephole. A man I didn't recognize stood in the hallway, average height, wearing a delivery uniform, holding a package. "Delivery for Emily Harrison," he called out. "I didn't order anything," I whispered to Raphael. His expression darkened. "Don't open it." "It's just a delivery. Emily, trust me on this. Don't open that door." Something in his tone, the absolute certainty of his command, made me step back. The man knocked again, more insistently. Raphael pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. Seconds later, I heard footsteps in the hallway, heavy, multiple sets. The delivery man's voice rose in protest, then went silent. "What's happening?" I asked. "My men are handling it." Raphael moved to my window, peering down at the street below. There. Black van, third car down. Someone's watching, waiting. Waiting for what? To see if you're alone. To see if I'm with you. To understand what you know. He turned back to me, his expression grim. "Emily, the moment you showed me your scar in that hospital, you became a target. Someone out there knows what it means, and they're not going to want us connecting the dots." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Tell your friend to back off, or the nurse finds out how her scar was really made." I showed Raphael the message with trembling hands. His jaw clenched as he read it. Then he made a call, speaking rapid Portuguese that I couldn't follow. When he hung up, his expression was controlled fury. "Pack a bag. Enough for a few days." "What?" "No, I'm not going anywhere with you. You can't stay here. Whoever sent that text knows where you live, knows I'm here, knows enough to threaten you directly. I can protect you, but not in an unsecured apartment with a lock a child could pick. I'll go to my parents. I'll call the police. The police can't protect you from this, and involving your parents will just put them in danger too. Emily, I know you don't know me, don't trust me, and you have every reason to be terrified. But right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and people who have already killed once to protect whatever secret your scar represents." I wanted to argue, to insist that this was all some insane misunderstanding, that I could just go back to my normal life of hospital shifts and quiet evenings and simple problems with simple solutions. But the text message glowing on my phone said otherwise. Someone out there knew about my scar, knew its significance, and was willing to threaten me to keep it secret. Which meant Raphael Moretti was right. I was connected to his wife's murder, to his daughter's disappearance, to a tragedy that happened when I was supposedly a toddler living in state custody. Unless I wasn't. Unless everything I thought I knew about my own history was a carefully constructed lie. One condition, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. You help me find the truth about who I really am. All of it, even if it doesn't lead back to your daughter. Even if it's ugly or dangerous or completely disconnected from your investigation. I need to know. Raphael studied me for a long moment, and I saw something like respect flicker in his dark eyes. Deal. Now pack. We leave in 5 minutes. As I threw clothes into a duffel bag, my hands working on autopilot while my mind raced, I caught sight of myself in the bedroom mirror. Same face I'd seen every morning for 23 years, same blonde hair, same hazel eyes. But now, everything familiar looked foreign, like I was seeing a stranger wearing my skin. Who was I really? The question echoed in my head as I followed Raphael Moretti out of my apartment and into his waiting car, leaving behind the simple life I'd built on what might have been nothing but lies. Raphael's safe house turned out to be a penthouse apartment in the Seaport district. All floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive minimalist furniture that screamed money and power. As his driver pulled into the underground garage, I counted 3 different security checkpoints, each manned by men who nodded respectfully at Raphael and assessed me with professional curiosity. "This is where you live?" I asked, as we stepped into a private elevator that required both a key card and a fingerprint scan. "One of several properties. This one is the most secure." He kept his body angled slightly toward me, protective but not invasive. "You'll have your own room, your own bathroom. My men will be posted throughout the building, but they won't enter the apartment without permission. You're safe here." The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, and despite everything, I couldn't help but be impressed. The space was beautiful in a cold, untouched way, like a showroom rather than a home. Abstract art hung on white walls, and the view of Boston Harbor stretched out through the windows like a painting. "There's food in the kitchen, though I rarely use it. Help yourself to anything." Raphael shrugged out of his jacket, and I caught a glimpse of the bandages beneath his shirt from the surgery 2 days ago. "The guest room is down the hall. Second door on the left. I need to make some calls, but I'll be in my office if you need anything." He started to walk away, then paused. "Emily, I know this is overwhelming, but I meant what I said. You're safe here, and I will help you find answers. Not just because of what your scar might mean to my investigation, but because you deserve to know the truth about your own life." After he disappeared into his office, I explored the guest room he'd indicated. It was larger than my entire apartment, decorated in shades of cream and gray, with a bed that looked like it had never been slept in. I set down my hastily packed bag and sank onto the mattress, trying to process the past 12 hours. Yesterday morning, I'd been Emily Harrison, pediatric nurse, adopted daughter, ordinary woman with an ordinary life. Now I was hiding in a crime boss's penthouse, being told that my entire identity might be fabricated, receiving threatening text messages from people who'd murdered a woman 10 years ago. It was too much. All of it was too much. I must have fallen asleep without meaning to, because I woke to darkness outside the windows and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. My phone showed it was past midnight. I'd slept for nearly 6 hours. Padding out to the living room in socks, I found Raphael sitting at the kitchen island with a laptop open, surrounded by papers and photographs. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black t-shirt, looking less like a businessman and more like what he actually was. Someone dangerous trying very hard to appear civilized. "You're awake," he said, not looking up from whatever he was reading. "There's coffee in the pot, or I can have food brought up if you're hungry. What are you working on?" "Your life." He gestured to the papers spread across the counter. Or at least, what passes for documentation of it. I've had my people pulling records since we left your apartment. Birth certificate, adoption papers, medical files, school records, everything I could access. I poured myself coffee with shaking hands and joined him at the counter. Among the papers, I recognized copies of documents I'd seen before. My adoption file, my vaccination records from childhood, my high school transcript. Find anything? I asked, not sure if I wanted the answer to be yes or no. Inconsistencies, small ones, but they're there if you know what to look for. He pulled out a document I recognized as my birth certificate. This says you were born at Boston Medical Center on May 15th, 2002. But there's no record of your birth in the hospital's database from that date. No mother listed in the maternity ward, no delivery logged, nothing. Maybe the records were lost. That was over 20 years ago. Possible, but unlikely, especially since every other birth from that month is accounted for. Just yours is missing. He pulled out another document. Your adoption file lists you as being placed in foster care at 13 months old, discovered wandering in a park with no identification. But the police report from that incident is sealed, and when my contacts tried to access it, they were told the file doesn't exist. Files get lost all the time. Not like this. Not with this many convenient gaps. Raphael's intensity made me take a step back. Emily, someone went to considerable effort to create a paper trail for you while simultaneously making sure that trail leads nowhere. Your documents exist, but they're hollow. They prove you're real without actually proving who you are. I sat down heavily on one of the bar stools, coffee forgotten. So what are you saying? That I'm not really Emily Harrison? That the Harrisons aren't my real parents? The Harrisons are your adoptive parents. That part seems legitimate. But who you were before they adopted you, that's where things get murky. He pulled up a photo on his laptop. This is Isabella's scar, photographed by the police after her death. The image was clinical, showing a pale forearm with a distinctive jagged scar running from wrist to mid-forearm. My stomach clenched as I compared it to my own arm, resting on the counter. The resemblance was undeniable. Not just similar, but identical in every detail, every irregular edge, every subtle variation in the scar tissue. This proves we're related somehow, I whispered. Or that you were there, Raphael said quietly. That night, when Isabella was killed. The coroner's report noted that she'd sustained the scar in childhood from a kitchen accident. But what if that wasn't the full story? What if she got a similar injury that night? And you... No. I stood up, backing away from the counter. You think I was involved in her murder? I was a baby. Not involved, present, a witness. Raphael's voice was gentle, but relentless. Emily, the timeline works if we assume your birth date is wrong. If you were really born in 2000 instead of 2002, you'd have been 6 months old when Isabella died, the same age as my daughter. And if you were there that night, if you sustained an injury that left this scar, then I might be your daughter. I finished, the words feeling surreal even as I spoke them. But how? How could I be her if I've been Emily Harrison my whole life? Witness protection, maybe. Or something darker. Kidnapping, trafficking, identity theft. Someone could have taken you after Isabella's death, changed your appearance enough that you wouldn't be recognized, aged you up in the records and sold you into adoption. Raphael's hands clenched into fists. I've seen it done before. Children disappear into the system all the time, especially if the right people are paid to look the other way. My phone buzzed, making us both jump. Another unknown number, another text. Stop digging, or we'll make sure Emily learns exactly how she got that scar. The hard way. Raphael read the message over my shoulder, his expression darkening. They're watching. They know I'm investigating. Who are they? That's what we need to find out. He pulled out his own phone, making a call in rapid Portuguese. While he talked, I wandered to the windows, staring out at the dark harbor below. Everything I'd known about myself was crumbling, revealing something darker underneath. The Harrisons loved me. I was certain of that. But had they known they were adopting a child with a false identity? Or had they been deceived too, victims of whatever conspiracy had stolen my real past? Raphael finished his call and joined me at the window. "I've arranged for a DNA test. We can do it tonight. Just a cheek swab, results in 48 hours. It won't tell us everything, but it'll confirm whether or not you're biologically related to Isabella. And if I am, then we know you were there that night. And we start hunting for who took you and why." His reflection in the window looked carved from stone. "Someone killed my wife and stole my daughter, Emily. If you're her, if you've been alive all this time..." His voice cracked slightly. "If you're her, then they've stolen 10 years from both of us, and I will make them pay for every single day." The vengeance in his voice should have frightened me, but instead, I felt a strange kinship with it. Because whoever had created this mystery, whoever had buried my real history and threatened me for getting too close to the truth, they'd stolen from me too. They'd stolen my identity, my memories, my right to know who I really was. "Do the test," I said, turning to face him. "And while we wait for the results, I want to see everything you have on that night. Police reports, witness statements, crime scene photos, all of it. If I was there, if I survived whatever happened, maybe seeing it will trigger something. A memory, a feeling, anything." Raphael studied me for a long moment, and I saw the exact moment he decided to trust me fully. "The files are in my office, but Emily, they're brutal. If you're really Isabella's daughter, you're going to see photos of your mother's murder scene. Are you sure you want that?" Was I? Could I handle seeing the violence that might have shaped my entire life, even if I couldn't remember it? But not knowing was worse. Not knowing meant living in this limbo, never certain who I was or where I'd come from. "Show me," I said. An hour later, I sat in Raphael's home office, surrounded by crime scene photographs and police reports that painted a picture of unimaginable horror. Isabella Moretti had been shot 3 times, defensive wounds on her hands suggesting she'd fought her attackers. The house had been ransacked, but nothing valuable taken, which the police report noted as unusual for a robbery gone wrong. And in the nursery, an empty crib with blood spattered on the white sheets. Just a few drops, but enough to suggest the baby had been present during the violence. "They never found her," Raphael said quietly, standing behind my chair. "I hired the best investigators, offered rewards that would set someone up for life, but no one came forward. It's like she vanished into smoke." I stared at a photograph of the nursery, at toys scattered across the floor, and a mobile hanging motionless above the crib. Something about the image tugged at my mind. Not a memory exactly, but a feeling of familiarity that I couldn't explain. "What was her name?" "Your daughter?" "Mariana, after Isabella's mother." Raphael's voice was rough. She had dark curls in my eyes, and she laughed every time Isabella sang to her. She was perfect. I looked down at my hands, at the scar running up my forearm, and wondered if somewhere in the blank spaces of my memory there was a woman's voice singing Portuguese lullabies. The DNA results came back 48 hours later, delivered by a nervous-looking lab technician who clearly recognized Raphael and wanted to leave as quickly as possible. Raphael dismissed him with a generous tip and stared at the sealed envelope for a full minute before opening it. I watched from the sofa, my coffee growing cold in my hands, my entire future compressed into whatever those results revealed. "Well?" I finally asked when the silence became unbearable. Raphael looked up, his expression unreadable. According to this, you share 50% of your DNA with Isabella Moretti. He set down the paper carefully, as if it might shatter. You're her daughter, Emily. You're Mariana. The room spun. I set down my coffee before I could drop it, focusing on breathing, on not letting the panic overwhelming my chest completely take over. That's impossible. I'm 23, not 13. I have memories of being a child, of elementary school, of... False memories aren't uncommon in young children, especially if they're reinforced by false documentation and caregivers who believe the lie themselves, Raphael said, moving to sit across from me. If you were told you were born in 2002, shown documents that supported it, treated as if you were that age, your mind would have accepted it as truth. But I remember things. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, school pictures. From age 4 onward, yes? That's what you said. Before that, everything's blank. Raphael leaned forward, his intensity tempered with something softer now, something that looked almost like hope. Emily, Mariana, you were taken when you were 6 months old. Whatever happened in those first years, whatever they did to hide you, your mind has no record of it. The memories you do have start when you were placed with the Harrisons, and by then, your new identity was already established. I stood abruptly, needing to move, to escape the weight of what he was saying. This is insane. You're telling me I've been living a lie for my entire life? That the Harrisons, people who love me, who raised me, were unknowing participants in some kind of conspiracy? I don't think they knew. The adoption appeared legitimate on paper, and you were young enough that they wouldn't have questioned your age if the document said one thing. Raphael's voice was careful, like he was talking to someone on the edge of breaking. But someone knew. Someone orchestrated this very carefully, taking you, hiding you for several years, then placing you with a good family who would ask the right questions, but accept the official answers. Who? Who would do this? I turned to face him, anger finally cutting through the shock. You said your wife was murdered during a robbery, but nothing was taken. You said you've investigated for 10 years and found nothing. So who benefits from killing her and stealing me? That's what I've been trying to figure out. Raphael stood as well, moving to a wall of his office where he'd pinned up photos and documents connected by red string like something out of a crime thriller. Isabella wasn't involved in my business. She was clean, innocent, exactly what I needed to believe there was good in the world. But someone wanted her dead specifically. The staging was too deliberate, the escape too clean. He pointed to a photo of a man I didn't recognize. Late 40s, expensive suit, cold eyes. This is Marcus Reyes. He was my second in command 10 years ago, the person I trusted most besides Isabella. 3 months after her death, he disappeared. Took a significant amount of money, destroyed most of his records, vanished completely. I thought he'd betrayed me and run, but I could never prove he was involved in Isabella's murder. You think he took me? Why? Leverage, maybe. Or revenge. Marcus always resented that I'd tried to keep Isabella separate from the business, that I'd softened in his eyes. He made comments about how a man in my position couldn't afford weakness, how family made you vulnerable. Raphael's jaw clenched. I should have seen it coming, should have protected them better. A text interrupted us, Raphael's phone lighting up with a message that made his expression darken. He showed me the screen. You found her. Congratulations. Now let her go before you get her killed too. Marcus, Raphael said grimly. He's been watching, waiting to see if we'd make the connection. And now that we have... The windows exploded inward. Glass shattered everywhere as bullets tore through the penthouse, systematic and deadly. Raphael grabbed me, throwing us both behind the heavy desk as the office turned into a war zone. I heard shouting in the hallway, return fire from Raphael's security team, and underneath it all, the steady percussion of shots designed to kill. "Stay down!" Raphael had a gun in his hand now, returning fire with practiced precision through the broken windows. "They're on the building across the street. Sniper positions." More glass shattered in the living room. I heard footsteps pounding up the stairs, voices shouting commands in Portuguese and English. Raphael's security team was fighting back, but the attackers had come prepared for resistance. "We need to move," Raphael said, pulling me toward the door. "There's a safe room, reinforced walls." An explosion rocked the apartment, and I felt Raphael's body shield mine as debris rained down around us. My ears rang, my vision swam, but I felt his hands on me, checking for injuries. "I'm okay," I gasped, though I wasn't sure if that was true. He pulled me to my feet, and we ran through the smoke-filled apartment. More gunfire erupted behind us, his men buying us time with their lives. The safe room was behind a hidden panel in his bedroom, steel reinforced and equipped with its own air supply. We made it inside, just as more shots echoed through the penthouse. Raphael slammed the door shut, engaging locks that sounded like bank vaults. The sudden silence was almost worse than the chaos. "They'll hold them off," Raphael said, checking his phone. "I have backup coming. Police response too, despite the paid-off officers. Too many witnesses. Too much noise. They'll have to retreat." "They tried to kill us," I said, the shock finally hitting me. "They tried to kill us because you found me. Because you're proof that Marcus lied. That Isabella's daughter survived and he's been hiding it for a decade." Raphael was already pulling up information on his phone, coordinating his security team's response. "He must have been the one who placed you in the system, who created your false identity. And now that we know the truth, he can't let us live to expose him. Why? Why keep me alive at all if he was just going to try to kill me later?" Raphael looked at me, and I saw the pieces clicking together in his mind. Insurance. You were his leverage over me, even if I didn't know it. As long as you were out there, hidden and safe, he could control me, threaten to hurt you if I got too close to the truth. But now that you're with me, now that you know who you are, you're not leverage anymore. You're a loose end. The gunfire outside had stopped. Raphael's phone lit up with reports. 4 attackers dead, 2 captured, the rest fled. His men had held the line, but 3 of them were injured, 1 critically. "We can't stay in Boston," Raphael said, already planning our next move. "Marcus knows where all my safe houses are, knows my patterns. We need to disappear until I can find him and end this. Or we could find out why he did it," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. The adoption papers, the falsified records, someone had to create all of that. Someone had to know where I was all these years. If we find that person, we find Marcus. Raphael studied me, and I saw respect in his eyes again. "You're your mother's daughter. She never backed down from a fight either." He pulled up a contact on his phone. "I know someone who specializes in finding people who don't want to be found. If Marcus created a paper trail for you, she'll uncover it." 2 hours later, we were in a different safe house. This one a nondescript condo in Cambridge that looked like every other rental property in the area. Raphael's contact, a woman named Sophia, who asked no questions and offered no small talk, had already started digging into my adoption records. "Your caseworker's name was Gerald Morrison," Sophia said, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard. "He handled your placement with the Harrisons, signed off on all the documentation. Retired 8 years ago, moved to Florida on a pension that seems unusually generous for a social worker." "Can we talk to him?" I asked. "We can do better than that. I've got his phone records from the time of your adoption. Multiple calls to a burner phone that pinged towers near Marcus Reyes's known locations." Sophia turned her laptop to show us a map with highlighted cell towers, Morrison was in contact with Marcus during the exact period when you were being placed with the Harrisons. That's not coincidence. Raphael's expression was ice. Morrison is still alive? Living in a retirement community in Tampa. I've already got his address. Sophia's smile was sharp. Want me to arrange a conversation? Within 6 hours, we were on Raphael's private plane heading to Florida. I watched Boston disappear below us, the city where I'd built my entire life, where I'd believed I knew who I was. Now I knew the truth. I was Mariana Moretti, daughter of a murdered woman and a crime boss, stolen as an infant and hidden for a decade. And somewhere out there, the man responsible for destroying my family was watching, waiting, planning his next move. But we were done running. We were going to find Marcus Reyes, and we were going to make him tell us everything. Why he'd killed Isabella, why he'd taken me, why he'd crafted such an elaborate lie. And then, if Raphael had his way, we were going to make him pay for every moment of the life he'd stolen from both of us. Gerald Morrison lived in a pleasant retirement community with palm trees and a golf course view, the kind of place where people went to forget about their complicated pasts. We found him on his patio, sipping iced tea and reading a thriller novel, looking nothing like someone who'd helped orchestrate a decade-long conspiracy. He saw us coming, Raphael cutting an imposing figure even in civilian clothes, me with my scar deliberately visible, and the blood drained from his face. Mr. Morrison, we need to talk about Emily Harrison, Raphael said, his voice carrying the kind of quiet menace that made Morrison's hands shake. Or should I call her by her real name, Mariana Moretti? Morrison set down his book carefully, trying to maintain composure even as fear flickered in his eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm retired. I don't handle cases anymore. 24 years ago, you placed a child with the Harrison family. A child who appeared in the system with falsified documents, no proper background check, no legitimate birth records. You signed off on everything, expedited the adoption, made sure no one asked too many questions. Raphael leaned against the patio railing, blocking Morrison's escape route. That child is sitting right here, and she'd very much like to know how you sleep at night. I watched Morrison's face, saw the moment he realized denial was pointless. They told me she'd be safe, that it was the only way to protect her. I thought I was doing the right thing. Who told you? I asked, keeping my voice level, even though rage simmered underneath. Who paid you to bury my real identity and give me to strangers? Marcus Reyes. Morrison's shoulders sagged. He came to me with a story. Said you were the daughter of a woman in witness protection, that your mother had been killed, and you needed to disappear before the people who killed her found you too. He showed me documents, police reports that looked legitimate. He paid me $100,000 to create new records for you, age you up by 2 years so no one would connect you to the missing Moretti baby, and place you with a good family who wouldn't ask questions. And you believed him? Raphael's voice was deadly quiet. I wanted to believe him. He made it sound like I was saving a child's life, like I was a hero instead of... Morrison broke off, unable to finish the sentence. By the time I realized something was wrong, that the police reports didn't match official records, that too many details didn't add up, it was too late. You were already with the Harrisons, already settling into your new life, and Marcus made it clear that if I said anything, if I tried to undo what I'd done, people would get hurt, including you. So you took the money and kept quiet, I said flatly. I took the money and tried to live with myself. Morrison looked at me directly for the first time, and I saw genuine regret in his eyes. For what it's worth, I made sure you went to good people. The Harrisons were thoroughly vetted, genuinely wanted a child, would give you the stable life you deserved. I told myself that counted for something. Raphael pulled out his phone, showing Morrison a photo of Marcus Reyes. Where is he now? He's been off the grid for years, but someone like you, someone he trusted with a secret this big, he'd have stayed in contact. Where is he? Morrison hesitated just a fraction too long. Raphael's hand shot out, grabbing the former social worker by the collar and pulling him close. My wife died begging for her daughter's life. This woman, he gestured to me, grew up not knowing who she really was because of your greed and cowardice. You'll tell us where Marcus is, or I'll make sure your comfortable retirement becomes very uncomfortable very quickly. He's in Brazil, Morrison gasped out. São Paulo. He has a compound there, operates businesses under different names. He said it was safer than staying in the U.S. after what happened. After he murdered my wife and stole my daughter, you mean? Morrison nodded miserably. Raphael released him with disgust, and the older man crumpled back into his chair. Why did he do it? I asked. If he just wanted to hurt Raphael, why not kill me too? Why go through all this effort to hide me? I don't know. I swear I don't know. He never told me his reasons, just what I needed to do. Morrison looked between us desperately. But there was something else. The last time he contacted me, about 5 years ago, he asked about you. Wanted to make sure you were healthy, doing well in school, staying out of trouble. It was strange, like he actually cared about your welfare. That detail stuck with me as Raphael made arrangements for Morrison to be monitored. Not arrested, because that would tip off Marcus that we were coming, but watched to make sure he didn't warn anyone. As we left the retirement community, I couldn't stop thinking about it. He kept track of me, I said to Raphael as we drove back to the airport. All these years, he was watching me grow up. That's not the behavior of someone who just wanted leverage. Then what is it? I didn't have an answer, but the question gnawed at me during the flight to Brazil. During the tense hours while Raphael coordinated with local contacts to locate Marcus's compound. During the careful planning of how we'd confront the man who'd destroyed both our lives. 3 days after leaving Morrison's patio, we stood outside a walled estate in the hills above São Paulo. Raphael had brought a small team, trusted men who'd been with him for years, who knew what was at stake. The plan was simple. Get in, find Marcus, get the truth. The compound was quieter than expected. Guards were posted, but not heavily. Marcus had gotten comfortable in his exile, confident that Raphael would never find him. That confidence was about to be shattered. We went in at dawn, when the light was still gray and the guards were tired from their overnight shift. Raphael's team moved like shadows, neutralizing security without raising alarms. Within 10 minutes, we were inside the main house, moving through rooms filled with expensive furniture and Brazilian art. We found Marcus in his study, working at a computer, completely unaware that his world was about to crash down around him. He looked older than in his photos. Silver hair, lines around his eyes, but still carried himself with the arrogance of someone who thought he was untouchable. Raphael kicked open the door, gun raised, and Marcus froze. "Hello, old friend," Raphael said, his voice like ice. "We need to talk about what you did to my family." Marcus's eyes flicked to me, standing behind Raphael, and something flickered across his face. Not fear exactly, but something complicated. Recognition mixed with regret. "Mariana," he said quietly, "you've grown up beautiful. You look like your mother." The casual observation, spoken as if we were meeting for tea instead of a confrontation that could end in violence, made my anger spike. You killed her. You stole me. And now you're going to tell us why, or Raphael's going to put a bullet in you. "It's more complicated than that," Marcus said, but Raphael's gun didn't waver. "Explain it to me. You have 5 minutes before I decide your life isn't worth the answers." Marcus leaned back in his chair, looking tired rather than frightened. "Isabella wasn't your wife's real name. It was Sofia Cardoso, and she wasn't an art history student from São Paulo. She was Brazilian intelligence, ABN, sent to infiltrate your organization. Her mission was to get close to you, gather evidence, bring down your entire operation. The words hung in the air like poison. Raphael's expression didn't change, but I saw his finger tighten on the trigger. You're lying. I wish I was. But I found out 6 months after she gave birth to Mariana. Found the communication logs, the reports she'd been filing, the extraction plan that was supposed to activate once she had enough evidence. Marcus's voice was heavy. She'd been playing you from the beginning, Raphael. Everything you thought you had with her was a lie. Then why kill her? I demanded. If she was going to betray him anyway, why not just let her? Because I was wrong. Marcus stood slowly, hands visible. I confronted her, told her I knew what she was, that I'd tell you unless she left immediately and never came back. And she broke down. Told me she'd fallen in love with you for real, that she couldn't go through with the mission, that she was planning to resign from Aben and disappear with you and Mariana. She begged me not to tell you because she knew it would destroy you. Not the betrayal of what she'd been, but the fact that she'd lied for so long. Raphael's hand was shaking now. So you killed her to spare me the truth? No, I killed her because I didn't believe her. I thought it was another manipulation, another layer of lies. And in my arrogance, I decided to eliminate the threat permanently. Marcus's composure cracked. I broke into your house while you were in Miami. I meant to make it look like a robbery, kill her quickly, and you'd never know she'd betrayed you. But Mariana was there, started crying when I shot her mother. And I looked at this baby, innocent in all of this, and I couldn't kill a child. Not in cold blood. So you took me instead, I said, pieces falling into place. Made it look like I'd been kidnapped too. Gave yourself time to figure out what to do. I had contacts in the adoption system, people who owed me favors. I created a new identity for you, placed you somewhere Raphael would never find you, somewhere you could grow up normal and safe. Marcus looked at Raphael. I told myself I was protecting her from this life, that she deserved better than to grow up as the daughter of a criminal and a spy, surrounded by lies and violence. But the truth is, I was protecting myself, hiding the evidence of what I'd done. Raphael's gun lowered slightly. You've been watching her, all these years. Someone had to make sure she was okay, that the Harrisons were treating her right, that she was healthy and happy. I set up accounts in her name, money she can access when she turns 25. Tried to give her something from the life I stole. Marcus's laugh was bitter. Pathetic, I know. Trying to buy absolution for murder. I stepped forward, standing between Raphael and Marcus. My mother, Sophia, Isabella, whoever she was, did she really love him? Or was that a lie too? Marcus met my eyes. Every intelligence report she filed in the last year of her life was redacted or destroyed before it reached her handlers. She stopped gathering real intelligence 6 months after she met Raphael. Started filing false reports to keep them happy while she figured out how to extract herself from the mission. She burned her entire career, risked prison, became a traitor to her country, all because she fell in love with a man she was supposed to betray. He looked at Raphael. Whatever she was when she met you, she became your wife in truth. That part wasn't a lie. Raphael stood frozen, processing revelations that rewrote his entire understanding of the woman he'd loved and mourned. I could see the war playing out behind his eyes, rage at the deception, grief at losing her again, desperate hope that some part of what they'd had was real. There's one more thing you need to know, Marcus said quietly. Aben never stopped looking for her. When she disappeared, when I killed her, they assumed Raphael had discovered her true identity and eliminated her. They've been planning retaliation for 10 years, building a case to bring down your entire organization. Her death started a war that's still brewing. Then we end it, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. We tell them the truth, that she died because she chose love over duty, because she was caught between two worlds. We give them closure. They'll want proof, Marcus said. Then we give them proof. I looked at Raphael. And we end this cycle, the lies, the revenge, the violence, for her sake. For the woman who gave up everything because she believed there was something better than the life she'd been living. Raphael holstered his gun, and I saw the exact moment he chose redemption over revenge. "You'll turn yourself in," he said to Marcus. "Face charges for Isabella's murder. Testify about Abin's operation. Give them everything they need to close their investigation and call off their plans." "And Mariana?" Marcus looked at me. "What happens to her?" "Emily," I corrected. "I'm Emily Harrison and Mariana Moretti, and I'm done letting other people decide who I am." I turned to Raphael. "I want to know my mother's real story. I want to meet her family, understand where I came from. But I'm not giving up the life I built, the parents who raised me, the person I became. I'm both, the stolen daughter and the found child." In the end, that's what we did. Marcus surrendered to Brazilian authorities, his confession triggering a cascade of revelations that shut down Abin's revenge operation and exposed corruption in their intelligence division. Raphael used his resources to locate Sophia's family, elderly parents who'd been told their daughter died a hero, who wept when they learned she'd had a child, that some part of her had survived. The Harrisons flew to São Paulo when I called them, confused and frightened but determined to support me. Watching my adoptive parents meet my biological grandmother, seeing Raphael explain to Sophia's father what his daughter had meant to him, I realized that family was more complicated and more beautiful than any simple definition. I kept my job at Boston General, kept my apartment, kept being Emily Harrison in all the ways that mattered, but I also became Mariana Moretti, learning Portuguese, spending time with my newfound family, understanding the intelligence officer who'd chosen love and paid for it with her life. Raphael and I weren't father and daughter in the traditional sense, but we built something, a connection forged through truth and pain, and the determination to honor Sophia's memory by being better than the circumstances that defined us. The scar on my arm stopped being a mystery and became a reminder instead. That we're all shaped by violence we don't remember, choices other people made, lies told with good intentions and bad. But we're also more than our scars, more than the stories others write for us. We're the sum of every identity we've claimed and every truth we've fought to uncover. And sometimes, that's enough to build a future from the ashes of the past.